thank you for the visit yesterday to your headquarters and the demonstration of, I think, true advancements in terms of 702 to try to avert any concern about constitutional issues. I still have some of those concerns, as you might expect, and we have proffered an alternative to the current system that we think is reasonable. It has an emergency exception in it to it, as it should, because there are issues of grave national security that can't wait even for the process to continue. And secondly, when it came to victimization, we allow consent by the victim to go forward with the collection of information in those situations, as it should be. Since the enactment of FISA Amendment Reauthorization Act of 2018, the FBI has been required to obtain a court order for U.S. person searches in a narrow subset of cases involving predicated criminal investigations unrelated to national security. Has the FBI ever obtained a court order in order to perform a U.S. person search of 702 data in this context?
To the best of my knowledge, we have not, and that's partly because that's not the way we use 702.
That's correct. The answer is 0. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence Annual Statistical Transparency Report for 2020 revealed that this statutory requirement has been triggered approximately 100 times. Is that true?
That I can't speak to the number. I think the report in question may involve incidents that all occur before the reforms that we just were talking about. But
I'd appreciate it if you take a look at that and answer for the record. Let me take to another topic that has been discussed before this committee and voted on several different occasions, and that's CSAM, Child Sexual Abuse Materials. Recently, the National Association of Attorneys General sent a letter to Congress asking lawmakers to study the means and methods of artificial intelligence, or AI, being used to exploit children through a generation of child sexual abuse material, or CSAM. In the letter, the attorneys general described how AI can be used to create new images of children in sexual positions or otherwise overlay photos of unvictimized children on photos of abused children to create CSAM. To put this in simple terms, I don't know of any parent or grandparent who's knowledgeable in this area who hasn't warned their children, grandchildren, please be careful what you communicate on the internet and who you communicate it with. You've highlighted the FBI's work to, quote, identify, prioritize, investigate, and deter individuals and criminal networks from exploiting children. And you've noted that the proliferation of CSAM on the dark net is threatening. Director Wray, can you elaborate on what the FBI is doing to disrupt technologies used to exploit children? What obstacles are you facing related to this work?
so I think there is no mission set, no threat that the FBI's men and women tackle that is more righteous and more at the heart of why we do what we do than protecting kids. And I know that last year we arrested something like 3,000 child predators and rescued something like 2,000 kids from exploitation, the vast majority of which is happening heavily online, but then often leads to what's even worse, which is the actual hands-on abuse. And certainly, as you noted, Mr. Chairman, technologies have continued to advance in a way that makes that threat even more pernicious, including AI, including the ability to create synthetic content, for example. When you ask about challenges that we face, one of the biggest concerns that we have is that the companies, these technology companies, are increasingly moving in a direction where they are designing warrant-proof encryption. And what that means to everybody listening at home is that we're going to be in a situation where the abuse that's happening on those platforms, law enforcement won't have any ability, no matter how rock solid the warrant, to get access to the information we need to protect those kids and take down those monsters. And the companies themselves are effectively blinding themselves to abuse that's happening on their own platforms. So what we really need is for the companies to work with Congress, work with the executive branch, work with law enforcement to design their encryption in a way that makes sure that they maintain the ability to respond to, rock solid legal process, respond to warrants.
So why aren't they cooperating with us? Why are these companies resisting an effort to engage them in solving the problem?
Well, I can't speak for them in terms of their motivations. Obviously, these issues get into balances of privacy and security, and that's a long-standing debate.
When it comes to children, for goodness sakes, what is the privacy concern there?
You got me. I will tell you that we get from some of these companies millions of tips we've had historically about child exploitation. And the idea that we would go into a model where those tips just evaporate, let's be clear, when the tips evaporate, the kids are still out there getting abused. The predators are still out there. The only thing's changed is our ability to do anything about it because of the way in which the companies would be designing their encryption. So it's a way for them to essentially and again, I can't speak to their motivation, but it's a way for them to essentially blind themselves to what's happening on their platforms and then indirectly then blind us to our ability to protect kids and go after predators.
We're going to be bringing some leaders in the industry before this committee next month. I hope we can ask these questions directly. But I will tell you, we passed overwhelmingly, unanimously, 5 different bills related to this issue. And I thought that was going to be an avenue to bring them to the floor. The resistance from big tech to even pursue this issue, despite this overwhelming bipartisan vote, troubles me greatly. I want to believe they want to do the right thing. There's very little evidence of that. Senator Graham.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, let's pick up on that real quickly. Do you agree that social media systems as they're designed today present dangers to American families?
Sure.
Thanks. All right, I don't know where to begin other than, is now a good time to fund the FBI below inflation?
I think
Just say no.
no. I was about to say hell no.
Yeah, no. You can say hell no if you want to. I'll say it
Leading
for
the
you.
witness.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's pretty dumb, given what you've told us. How long have you been associated with the FBI?
Well, I've been director a little over 6 years, but I've been working with the FBI my whole career, really.
Let's put a fine point on where we're at today as America. How would you describe the threat matrix against America today from your point of view after having been at the FBI most of your adult life?
So what I would say that is unique about the environment that we're in right now in my career is that while there may have been times over the years where individual threats could have been higher here or there than where they might be right now, I've never seen a time where all the threats, or so many of the threats, are all elevated all at exactly the same time. That's what makes this environment that we're in now so fraught, and why funding our men and women who are working shoulder to shoulder with state and local law enforcement and other partners every day makes it even more important, not less.
So blinking red lights analogy about 9/11, all the lights were blinking red before 9/11. Apparently, obviously, all of us missed it. Would you say that there's multiple blinking red lights out there?
I see blinking lights everywhere I turn.
Okay, all right. Can't say any better than that. Who's driving all these problems? Let's start with Iran. What is Iran trying to do to America?
So Iran, which is, of course, the world's biggest state sponsor of terrorism, let's start there. Iran, just in the last couple of years, if you want to bring it home, here to the homeland, in the last couple of years, Iran has tried to assassinate a former U.S. national security advisor on U.S. soil, has tried to kidnap and then try to kill a journalist, American journalist and human rights activist, right smack in the middle of New York City, has conducted a cyber attack on a children's hospital in New England, and for extra credit, as Director Ratcliffe and I announced in the fall of 2020, tried to interfere in the last presidential election. So that's just a start. So if that's not enough
Other
to
than
convince
that,
people.
they've been pretty good to work with, right? Okay, let's look at, you said we found enough fentanyl to kill 80% of American people?
And that's just in the last 2 years.
Okay, do you think we missed some fentanyl?
Absolutely.
Okay. What role does China play in the fentanyl problems America has?
Well, I'd start with China supplies most of the precursors to the cartels in Mexico, which then leads to the fentanyl that comes here. And that's been talked about a fair amount, and it's a huge problem. But in addition to that, China is also responsible for an awful lot of the pill presses, manufacturing of the pill presses, which, of course, are also used. And in addition to that, a lot of people don't know this, but China is also responsible for an awful lot of the precursors for the meth that's manufactured south of the border as well.
Do you see that getting better?
I do not.
Let's talk about Russia. What are they up to?
Well, besides their unconscionable aggression in Ukraine, Russia has one of the most advanced, most widespread offensive cyber programs in the world. They have invested in it very heavily and have used it in different ways against us and our allies. They have intelligence officers here in the United States, too many by any measure. They also provide safe haven to cyber criminals who, whether they're working for the Russian government or not, are conducting cyber attacks against us and our allies all over the world. So that's just a start.
Okay, let's go to international terrorist organizations. One of my concerns is after Afghanistan, we sort of put international terrorism on steroids. Are you concerned that international terrorism threats to the homeland are rising as the border continues to be broken?
I am concerned that we are in an elevated threat environment, a heightened threat environment from foreign terrorist organizations for a whole host of reasons. And obviously their ability to exploit any port of entry, including our southwest border, is a source of concern. You know, there's a lot of discussion about numbers, and numbers are important, but let's not forget that it didn't take a big number of people on 9/11 to kill 3,000 people. So while numbers are important, numbers don't tell the whole story. And we have seen an increase in so-called KSTs, known as suspected terrorists, attempting to cross, over the last 5 years.
Would you say, kind of putting a fine point on this topic, that right now is the largest threat we face as a nation from international terrorist organizations since 9/11?
Well, it's certainly higher than it's been in a long, long time. Let me put it that way. Because if you just look post-October 7th, and when I thought the threat was elevated before October 7th, but post-October 7th, you've seen a veritable rogues gallery of foreign terrorist organizations calling for attacks against us.
Okay, so October the 7th was devastating to our friends in Israel. So your testimony before this committee, since October 7th, the urging a foreign terrorist organization to attack America has gone up. Is that fair to say?
Yes, the threat level has gone to a whole nother level since October 7th.
Okay, folks, you're on notice. What are we going to do about it? Finally, what should we be doing differently with all these bad actors? I think it's fair to say we've lost deterrence. Do you have any idea quickly of what we could be doing differently?
Well, certainly deterrence requires consequences. And so consequences need to be imposed on bad actors in a variety of ways to ensure deterrence. Consequences are also part of disrupting, even without deterrence, disrupting and degrading bad actors' abilities to harm us.